Lefty journalist takes in Muslim refugee. Guess what happened next? Don't believe all the heart-wrenching footage of refugees you see on TV. The reality is, the many people flooding Europe for handouts aren't innocent mothers and children. The toxic socialist policies of the UK and other nations have opened the door to leeches. These children have flooded the system, abusing these nations' handout programs. That is what one journalist from England, Lynn Barber, found out the hard way. From Mad World News. Daily Mail reports that Barber was initially ecstatic to rehome Mohammed, who claimed to be a persecuted Sundanese political refugee. The Muslim migrant told Barber that he was granted asylum status after sneaking into the UK through people smugglers and, after being detained by Italian authorities, freely travelled to Britain as a refugee. Soon, however, the truth surfaced. Barber explained that Mohammed became belligerent and aggressive, trashed her home, began smuggling drugs into his room, ran up her internet bill downloading excessive amounts of pornography, and continuously abused the taxpayer-funded medical and welfare benefits he was so generously given. Mohammed informed Barber that although she owned the house, he was going to treat her like his mother, which entailed her acting as his personal chef, maid, and dry cleaner. Then came the kicker. When Mohammed discovered that Barber was going to publish a memoir about her ordeal to show readers you don't have to be a saint to take in a refugee, you just have to have a spare room, he flew into a rage and mocked her stupidity by confessing that he's not a real refugee but a welfare leech who comes from a wealthy family. Imagine my surprise. Spoiler, I'm not. Time and again we are learning about these kinds of abuses in Europe and around the world. While there are people suffering from the war in Syria, hundreds if not thousands of refugees are abusing the system. So-called children turn out to be grown men, who go on to harass, harm, and sometimes even kill the families that welcome them into their homes. This man admits he only came to Europe to abuse their benefits. Because if he stayed in his homeland, he'd actually have to work for his food. Yet because of the political correctness and stupidity of England and the rest of Europe, leeches like Mohammed are destroying their societies. But will the people of Europe, and their leaders, stand up to this kind of insanity? Not likely. Sadly, she gained no wisdom from the experience that will do her any service, ultimately affirming that she's hoping to take in yet another refugee in the future. In fact, Barber seems to think that vowing to only rehome much more deserving migrants will prevent this and worse from happening again. Like most liberals, Barber built up this fantasy in her mind of taking in a poor, destitute family of sweet, innocent people. People who would worship this wise, liberal woman for her generosity. Even when faced with the reality that such people do not exist, she clings to this obsession. The UN Refugee Agency reports at the time of this article's publishing that only 6.5% of migrant arrivals are Syrian. A whopping 72.5% are men, although this figure doesn't take into account the recent report from Sweden which confirmed that age testing proves 75% of the child refugees are also adults. It's like an entire continent of people are marching off a cliff into oblivion. They willingly expose themselves to death and destruction, just to virtue signal their righteousness. At least we can learn from their idiocy.